Back in November, just a few months ago, I had painted this miniature, and this is what I painted this week. For this video, I'm going to show you how I did that. Oh, hi guys, welcome to Mobhammer 40K, I'm Mob, and if you've been a part of my channel, you've noticed I haven't really posted any long-form videos in a while, and the reason for that is because I've really been wanting to try and focus on improving my techniques as a painter, so that way when I get to making these videos, you can see a dramatic improvement in the quality of my painting from my other videos. I think a lot of YouTube channels and Instagram accounts, social media handles, what have you, show you amazing pieces of work that if you're a beginner, you might get discouraged if you're not able to achieve that same look. You either don't have the proper paints, you don't have brush control, and I know for me personally, I get kind of frustrated when a miniature doesn't turn out the way I want it to. And I think that people get discouraged and they kind of get a little bit of painter's block and they're less excited about painting. I really want to show basically my amateurish process as I work from the beginning phases of just using straight up contrast paint over white to applying layers and trying to do reflective surfaces and just, making it a approachable thing for fellow beginners like myself to get excited about and see that with time and practice, you can make more and more work that you're proud of. Anyways, let's get started. I always start with priming my miniatures black using Vallejo black primer through my airbrush. And for this miniature, we're going to also use Vallejo white primer as a zenithal highlight from above. Make sure that the top of the miniature as well as the face of the helmet get the most love, while also spraying a little at an angle around the miniature to make sure we have some more light details. Moving on to color, I have Vallejo Express Troll Green, the same color I used on my last Space Marine video, but this time through the airbrush it comes out much cleaner. Now, you can either pick up rattle cans of white and black to do the zenithal highlight and then paint your one coat paint on, or you can also find a cheap airbrush online for priming and base coating, which will be more than enough. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg to get a full setup, but an airbrush will help you move much faster, especially when you get to batch painting. Now, you saw me move over to my brush where I grabbed Brass Scorpion, and I'm using this to base coat the Aquila as well as the shoulder pads, which I forgot to do for this reveal. Moving on to Earth, I base coat all of the leather pouches and holsters, which we'll be adding more details to later. Moving on to gunmetal paint, I use this to coat the in-between armor bits, the jump pack, as well as the Marine's bolter. Remembering the shoulder pads, I go back to applying the gold trim. Because our green is a one-coat paint, it can be a bit nerve-wracking applying metallics or any other layered paints. It's very difficult to cover up any mistakes if you paint outside the lines, so it's good to take your time and maybe put on a podcast or video in the background and try not to get too much in your head. Grabbing dead white, I very carefully apply to the eyes with a small, lightly loaded brush, trying to brace my hands against a solid surface so I shake less. With bone white, once again, I very carefully apply to the little skull on his helmet as well as the scrolls on his bolter. Next, with bloody red, I paint the wax seals, and I didn't show the paint, but I then grabbed the Citadel Technical Paint Spirit Stone Red for the eyes of the helmet, and finished up with a very little amount of white to add a slight reflection effect on the eyes. I should have absolutely done this sooner, but I grabbed my electric drill and add a hole at the muzzle at the end of the bolter. Just a nice little touch overall for the model. For the next step, I grab the world famous and delicious Nuln oil and perform a very careful, controlled wash over the Aquila, forehead skull, and bolter. I wanted to be sure that the wash didn't spill over onto the colors, otherwise I would lose some of that vibrancy. Grabbing the contrast paint, Gore Grunt of Fur, I once again go over the pouches, giving it a darker shade and a little more definition than the Earth would allow on its own. Next, I begin to layer on the straight earth paint to create highlights and light fall off. I further enhance this effect by mixing a little white with earth to create one more final highlight. Now, it's time to highlight our metallics. Taking polished gold, I pick out certain raised section of the Aquila and shoulder pads, which, combined with the Nuln oil Brass Scorpion layer but underneath it, really creates a nice amount of depth for the miniature. For our gunmetal layer, we grab Vallejo Silver to edge highlight, picking out details on the bolter and jump pack. With white, we add a slight edge highlight to the scrolls as well. Wanting to get a little more detailed and challenge myself, I grab a fine brush and add straight lines mimicking text written out on the scrolls. Just a nice little touch when looking at the miniature from afar. Now it's time for probably one of the more challenging and tedious parts of painting Space Marines. Using moot green mixed in with a little white, I start panel lining the Marine. It's crucial to test the brush on your skin to make sure you don't have too much paint loaded on. This is a part that can take a lot of time and practice. Even on this mini, my lines are not perfect, but I really try to remember to be kind to myself and just try to do better next time. Honestly, at this point, I could have probably stopped and been very happy with this mini, but I wouldn't be learning and improving if I didn't further challenge myself. And I want to try adding more layers to the armor. Using thinned down moot green with only a tiny bit of white, I start picking out areas that I feel would be highlighted by environmental lighting, picking out parts of the chest, legs, head, and arms. The zenithal highlight helps as a sort of guide, helping me figure out where I should be putting these lighter layers. Adding a little more white to the moot green, we add a second layer building upon the previous one, building up more of this reflection effect. Then, to complete it, we add a mostly white with only a tiny bit of moot green and a very conservative amount to the miniature. Upon reflection, I kinda wish I only applied this effect to one side of the mini instead of both. There have been so many people talking about non-metal metallic paint methods, and they all look absolutely stunning. I'm a little intimidated at this point to commit to doing a full non-metal metallic project myself, but this was a worthwhile attempt at introducing myself to building on layers to emulate reflective surfaces. One more note on this is that I received a comment that by adding white paint to my layer colors, I actually end up desaturating them slightly. Perhaps the answer may be to get a more variety of paints, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you agree. Now, on the arm of this mini, there is what looks like a little screen, so I paint it white and then use soulstone blue to give it a little glow. You will also notice I painted the little keypad buttons red. With a tiny bit of white, I add a little bit of a glare effect on the screen. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please hit that like and subscribe button. We're a small channel, so every little bit helps. And it helps me decide what kind of content to make in the future. Anyways, let's recap quick. Prime your miniature black. Add a white zenithal highlight. Apply your choice of one coat paint. Layer on secondary colors and metallics. Add on shades, additional colors, and layering, panel lining, and after all that we add a reflective layering, we get our final result. Honestly, I'm really excited to try and take all these techniques and get to work on my Leviathan Space Marine box. Stay tuned as I tackle more projects and improve on my painting journey. Thank you, everybody.